Let me ask you a question. How many of the problems in your life were not created by the world, but by your own reactions? Think about it. Most of the wounds we carry are not from what happened to us, but from how we responded, how we spoke, how we acted in anger, how we mismanaged our choices. If you look closely, life is not always about controlling the external world, but about controlling the internal one. If you can master 4 things, your mouth, your mood, your money, and your mind, you can change the entire trajectory of your life. Stay with me until the end, because each one of these will determine not only your success, but also your peace, your relationships, and your legacy. When we think about power, most people imagine strength, money, or influence. But one of the greatest forms of power lies in something so simple and so easily overlooked: your mouth. The words you choose to release into the world have the ability to build bridges or burn them, to heal hearts or break them, to inspire growth or destroy potential. Every single conversation you have carries weight, even the smallest ones. A careless sentence can linger in someone's memory for years, replaying in their mind like an echo, shaping how they see themselves, while a kind word can be the very spark that gives them courage to rise again. That's how powerful words are. Yet so many of us let them escape without thought, not realizing that once spoken, they can never be taken back. You can apologize, you can explain, you can regret, but you cannot erase the words you have released into the air. They live, they grow, and they create consequences far beyond what you imagined at the moment you said them. Think about your own life for a moment. Recall the times when someone's words wounded you so deeply that the pain was sharper than any physical injury. It could have been a parent's harsh remark, a friend's betrayal, or a partner's cutting criticism. Those words likely stayed with you far longer than the actual moment they were spoken. Now think about the opposite. The times when someone's words lifted you up, when they told you they believed in you, when they encouraged you in your darkest season. Those words also live inside of you, and they fuel you to keep going even when life feels unbearable. Words can break the spirit, but they can also breathe life into it. This is why controlling your mouth is not just about being polite. It is about understanding the responsibility that comes with speech. You carry the power to influence someone's entire sense of self with the way you speak to them, and that responsibility should never be taken lightly. Many people confuse honesty with recklessness. They think speaking their mind at all times is a sign of strength, but uncontrolled honesty without wisdom is nothing more than cruelty. Just because something is true doesn't mean it needs to be said in the moment, and just because you feel something doesn't mean it must be voiced without filter. Controlling your mouth doesn't mean silencing yourself or living in pretense. It means choosing your words carefully, timing them wisely, and aligning them with intention. Words that are rushed out in anger often cause damage that takes years to undo, while words delivered with patience and care can create understanding where conflict once lived. The mouth is a tool, but like any tool, it must be guided with discipline. Another layer of this is the way we speak about ourselves. So many people sabotage their own growth with their own tongue. They constantly speak words of doubt, words of limitation, words of defeat. They say things like, "I'll never be good enough," "I can't do this," or "I'm not worthy," and then wonder why life seems to reflect those very statements. The truth is, the words you say to yourself shape the way you see the world and the way you act within it. If you continually speak negativity, your mind begins to accept it as truth, and your actions follow. But if you train your mouth to declare strength, hope, and possibility, even when you don't fully feel it yet, you are planting seeds that will eventually grow into confidence and resilience. Control over your mouth also means knowing when to remain silent. Silence is not weakness. In fact, it is often the greatest display of strength. It takes far more power to hold back a biting remark than it does to unleash it. Silence can diffuse conflict, protect your dignity, and save you from unnecessary battles. In moments of anger or frustration, silence allows time for clarity to return, for emotions to settle, and for wisdom to guide your response. Many relationships are destroyed not because of what was done, but because of what was said in the heat of the moment. Choosing silence is not avoidance. It is strategy. It is the decision to value peace and respect over the fleeting satisfaction of having the last word. In every interaction, you have a choice. Will your words become a weapon, or will they become medicine? Will you use them to tear down, or will you use them to build up? Every day you are given countless opportunities to either hurt or heal through what comes out of your mouth. The conversations with your family, your coworkers, your friends, even strangers, all of these are moments where your words matter. Some of the most life-changing experiences people have are not grand gestures, but simple words of kindness spoken at the right time from someone who cared enough to speak life instead of destruction. That is the real power of controlling your mouth. You stop using your words carelessly, and you begin using them intentionally as tools of growth, healing, and connection. One of the greatest challenges human beings face is learning how to master their emotions. Feelings are powerful and they are real, but they are also temporary. They rise and fall like waves, shifting with circumstances, stress, or even the smallest inconvenience. Yet, while emotions are fleeting, the actions we take in response to them can leave permanent marks. An angry outburst may last only minutes, but the damage it causes can linger for years. A jealous thought may spark in a moment, but if acted upon, it can destroy trust that took decades to build. This is why controlling your mood is not about denying your feelings, but about refusing to let them dictate decisions that will outlive the moment. The truth is, the consequences of one uncontrolled mood can become a chain reaction that alters your entire life, and often people realize this too late. Think about how many regrets in your life are tied to moments when you acted out of anger, frustration, or hurt. Maybe you yelled at someone you loved, slammed the door on an opportunity, or made a decision you later wished you could take back. At the time, it felt justified because your emotions were in control, but when the storm passed, regret settled in. That's the danger of letting your moods lead you, because when your emotions are in charge, wisdom takes a back seat. Emotional reactions often magnify problems instead of solving them, and what could have been a small misunderstanding escalates into a lasting wound simply because you gave your emotions the microphone. Controlling your mood is not the same as suppressing your emotions. Suppression is burying feelings and pretending they don't exist, which only leads to them erupting later in destructive ways. Control, on the other hand, means acknowledging how you feel, sitting with it long enough to understand it, and then choosing how to respond in a way that serves your long-term peace rather than your temporary satisfaction. For example, you may feel anger rising during an argument, but instead of lashing out, you pause, breathe, and give yourself the space to respond with clarity instead of chaos. That pause, that restraint, is the difference between building a bridge or burning it forever. Our moods are also heavily influenced by external factors, and when we don't recognize this, we allow circumstances to dictate our inner world. Lack of sleep, hunger, stress from work, or even a negative comment online can shift your mood and trigger reactions that have nothing to do with the people around you. The key is to create self-awareness, to pause and ask yourself, is this really about the person in front of me, or is it about the state I am in right now? Self-awareness allows you to separate your temporary emotional state from your permanent values so you don't confuse the two. When you know yourself deeply, you begin to recognize emotional triggers before they control you, and this awareness becomes your shield against destructive reactions. Another critical aspect of controlling your mood is realizing that other people do not deserve to be at the mercy of your emotions. Too often, people take out their frustration on the ones closest to them simply because they feel safe enough to do so. But safety should not be an excuse for cruelty. If anything, the people who love you most deserve the best of your moods, not the worst. Constantly lashing out at those around you because you're unable to regulate yourself creates resentment, fear, and distance. On the other hand, learning to manage your moods builds trust, respect, and stability in your relationships because people know they can rely on you to stay steady even when life feels chaotic. It's also important to remember that mood control is not only about anger or frustration, it is about the full spectrum of emotions. Excitement, for example, if uncontrolled, can lead to impulsive decisions such as overspending, saying yes to things you shouldn't, or committing to something you cannot handle. Sadness, if not balanced, can spiral into despair and keep you from moving forward. Even joy, if expressed without awareness, can sometimes blind you to reality and cause you to overlook important responsibilities. Every emotion, no matter how positive or negative it feels, requires management because unchecked emotion of any kind has the potential to lead you away from wisdom. When you control your mood, you don't let temporary storms dictate the course of your life. You learn to step back, to pause, to process, and to choose. That ability separates people who are constantly tossed around by life from those who remain steady no matter what comes their way. Control over your mood is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about refusing to let what you feel in one moment define the outcome of your entire future. The moment will pass, the emotion will fade, but the words you spoke, the choices you made, and the actions you took will remain, shaping not only your path, but also the lives of those around you. Money is one of the most misunderstood tools in life. People chase it, worship it, misuse it, and often allow it to control them rather than learning how to control it. The truth is, money in itself is neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply a tool, a resource that can either grant you freedom or trap you in cycles of stress and dependence, depending on how you manage it. The problem is not money. The problem is the lack of discipline around it. Too many people live their entire lives working endlessly for money while never learning how to make money work for them. The irony is that financial freedom is not found in how much you earn, but in how well you control what passes through your hands. Without control, even great wealth can disappear. But with discipline, even modest income can grow into stability and independence. Controlling your money begins with a mindset shift. You must stop seeing money as something that slips away faster than it comes and start viewing it as energy that can be directed with intention. Every dollar you earn is a seed, and what you do with it determines what kind of harvest you will reap. If you spend recklessly without thought, those seeds are wasted. But if you save, invest, and allocate wisely, those seeds multiply and bear fruit over time. The danger lies in impulse. Too many people allow emotions, excitement, insecurity, envy, or even sadness to dictate how they spend. Shopping becomes therapy, spending becomes a way of showing status, and before they know it, they are trapped under debt and financial stress. This is why control is essential, because money without discipline always leads to bondage rather than freedom. Another part of controlling your money is learning to live within your means. It may sound simple, but it is one of the hardest lessons for many people. Society constantly pressures you to want more, buy more, and keep up appearances that don't match your reality. Advertisements tell you that happiness is one purchase away, and social media makes you feel inadequate if you are not living a certain lifestyle. But true wealth is not about showing off. It is about security, stability, and choice. If you are living paycheck to paycheck just to appear successful, you are not in control of your money. Your ego is in control of you. Real success is having peace of mind, knowing your bills are paid, your savings are growing, and you are not a prisoner of debt just to impress others who are not even paying attention. Control also means respecting money enough to track it. You cannot manage what you do not measure. Too often, people avoid looking at their finances because they fear the truth, but ignorance only makes the problem worse. When you take time to write down your expenses, set a budget, and see exactly where your money goes, you gain clarity. That clarity gives you power because you can then make conscious decisions instead of unconscious mistakes. A budget is not restriction, it is direction. It tells your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Without that control, money slips through your fingers like water, and no matter how much you earn, it never feels enough. Investing and saving are also critical aspects of financial control. Saving provides security, a cushion for emergencies, and the peace of mind that you can handle life's unexpected challenges without falling apart. Investing, on the other hand, is about growth. It is the way to make money work for you instead of always working for money. Every wise investment plants a tree that will provide shade and fruit in the future. But this requires patience and discipline because wealth does not grow overnight. Many people fail here because they want quick results, but quick money is usually unstable money. The real path to financial freedom is long-term consistency, small but steady steps that build into significant results over time. Perhaps one of the most overlooked parts of controlling your money is learning to separate needs from wants. Needs are essential for survival: food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, but wants are often tied to desire, status, and comparison. When you confuse the two, you end up spending money you don't have on things you don't need, just to impress people who don't care. The discipline to delay gratification, to prioritize stability over temporary pleasure, is what builds long-term freedom. Every time you choose to save instead of splurge, to invest instead of waste, you are buying yourself more freedom, more peace, and more choices in the future. At its core, controlling your money is not about greed, stinginess, or obsessing over every cent. It is about freedom. Freedom from debt, freedom from financial stress, freedom from being forced into choices you don't want to make just to survive. Money touches every area of life: your relationships, your opportunities, your health, your dreams. When you control it, you expand your possibilities. You have the freedom to give generously without fear, to pursue opportunities without being chained to survival, and to live with dignity rather than dependence. This is why financial control is not just about numbers. It is about life itself. The human mind is the most powerful force you will ever possess. It has the ability to create entire realities, to build futures, and to destroy possibilities all at the same time. Every thought that passes through your mind carries energy, and that energy has the power to direct your actions, shape your habits, and ultimately define the quality of your life. The saying, "As you think, so you become," is not just philosophy. It is reality. If you constantly fill your mind with doubt, fear, and negativity, you will unconsciously begin to live out that story. On the other hand, if you discipline your mind to focus on possibilities, growth, and resilience, you create a life that reflects those very beliefs. Your outer world is often a reflection of your inner world. And this is why controlling your mind is one of the most important disciplines you can ever develop. So many people live as slaves to their thoughts without even realizing it. They believe every negative idea that passes through their mind as if it were an undeniable truth. They think, I'm not good enough, and immediately act in ways that prove it. They think, I will never succeed, and so they give up before they even try. They think, everyone is against me, and so they isolate themselves and sabotage relationships. The mind is constantly talking, constantly narrating, and if you don't learn to control the voice inside, it will control you. That inner dialogue becomes the filter through which you see the world. Two people can live through the exact same circumstances. One sees it as a challenge and opportunity, the other as a curse and defeat, because the difference is not in the situation, but in the way their minds interpret it. Controlling your mind begins with awareness. Most people don't even notice their thought patterns. They are so used to their internal narrative that they mistake it for truth. But the moment you begin to observe your thoughts instead of simply reacting to them, you take the first step toward control. You start to realize that not every thought is valid, not every fear is real, and not every judgment is accurate. The mind produces endless noise, but you have the ability to choose which thoughts you engage with and which ones you release. This ability to separate yourself from the noise and direct your focus is what gives you power. Without it, you remain trapped in cycles of negativity that were never true to begin with. Another part of controlling your mind is learning the discipline of focus. The mind is easily distracted. It jumps from one thought to another, often pulled toward worries, comparisons, or regrets. But the more you allow your focus to scatter, the more powerless you become. Focus is like a magnifying glass. Whatever you place it on grows larger. If you constantly focus on problems, they appear bigger than they are. If you focus on possibilities, solutions begin to emerge. Training your mind to focus on what serves you rather than what drains you is one of the most transformative skills you can develop. It doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing the perspective that empowers you to move forward instead of the one that keeps you stuck. The thoughts you feed your mind also matter. Just as your body becomes what you eat, your mind becomes what you consume. If you surround yourself with negativity, gossip, and destructive content, your mind absorbs it and begins to reflect it. If you constantly indulge in pessimism, your mind becomes wired to expect disappointment. But if you intentionally feed your mind with wisdom, positivity, and inspiration, your thought patterns begin to shift. Books, conversations, environments, and even the people you spend time with all shape the quality of your thoughts. This is why protecting your mental space is an act of control. It determines whether your mind becomes a battlefield or a sanctuary. Another layer of mental control is mastering self-talk. The way you speak to yourself is one of the most influential forces in your life. You may not even notice it, but your mind is constantly having a conversation with itself. The question is, are you being your own critic or your own coach? Negative self-talk erodes confidence and creates invisible barriers between you and your goals. But when you train yourself to speak words of encouragement, strength, and belief, you build resilience. This doesn't mean lying to yourself or ignoring challenges. It means affirming that you are capable of overcoming them. When your mind is filled with empowering self-talk, you carry yourself differently, you make bolder choices, and you refuse to let setbacks define you. Controlling your mind also requires learning to let go of what you cannot control. Much of mental suffering comes from obsessing over the past or fearing the future. The mind clings to regrets, replaying them over and over, or it projects fears into the future, creating stress over situations that haven't even happened. Both are forms of losing control. True mental discipline is about bringing yourself back to the present, because the present is the only place where you actually have power. Every time you pull your mind away from regret and fear and anchor it in the now, you strengthen your ability to live intentionally rather than reactively. Ultimately, controlling your mind is about understanding that your thoughts are not just harmless ideas floating around in your head. They are seeds. Whatever seeds you plant will grow. Plant negativity and you harvest limitations. Plant positivity and you harvest strength. Plant doubt and you harvest hesitation. Plant courage and you harvest action. Your mind is a garden and it will grow whatever you allow into it. Without control, weeds will take over. But with care and intention, you can cultivate a space that produces growth, clarity, and peace. When most people hear the word control, they immediately think of restriction, denial, or suppression. They imagine holding back their true selves, hiding their emotions, or pretending to be someone they're not. But real control is not about silencing who you are. It is about guiding your energy, your thoughts, and your actions toward a meaningful purpose. Suppression is dangerous because it pushes emotions deep inside, where they do not disappear, but instead grow stronger, heavier, and more destructive over time. Direction, on the other hand, is powerful because it acknowledges the emotion, honors its existence, and then channels it in a way that creates growth instead of chaos. The difference between suppression and direction is the difference between locking emotions in a cage and training them to run free in the right path. One destroys you slowly from the inside, while the other builds strength, clarity, and peace. Take anger, for example. When suppressed, anger becomes poison. It doesn't vanish. It hides, waiting for the smallest trigger to erupt in an explosion far greater than the situation requires. Suppressed anger shows up as bitterness, resentment, or even physical illness because the body holds on to what the heart refuses to release. But when anger is directed, it can become a force for change. History is full of people who took their anger at injustice, inequality, or suffering and directed it into movements that transform the world. Anger itself is not the enemy, it is energy. The problem is when that energy is suppressed or misdirected. When you learn to control it by channeling it into constructive action, anger stops being destructive and starts being transformative. The same is true for sadness. Suppression tells you to bury your sadness, to put on a mask, to act strong even when your soul feels broken. But sadness doesn't disappear just because you refuse to show it. It lingers, it deepens, and it weighs you down until it manifests as depression or hopelessness. Direction, however, means allowing yourself to feel sadness, to acknowledge its message, and then to express it in healthy ways, through conversation, through writing, through art, through healing practices that release rather than bury it. Sadness directed with intention can lead to compassion, deeper connection with others, and personal growth. It reminds you of your humanity and allows you to sit with the reality of life without being swallowed by it. Control as direction also applies to the way you use your words. Suppression of speech may mean staying silent when you should speak up, allowing others to walk over you, or holding back truths that could bring healing. But uncontrolled speech, blurting out every thought, venting every emotion, or lashing out in anger, can cause irreparable damage. Direction is the balance. It means knowing when to speak, what to say, and how to say it so your words create the outcome you desire. A person who directs their words has far more influence than someone who suppresses them out of fear or someone who sprays them recklessly without thought. Words under control are words with purpose, and words with purpose carry power. Even your desires and ambitions require direction. Suppressing them by convincing yourself you shouldn't dream, shouldn't aim high, or shouldn't want more only leads to a life of regret. Yet allowing desires to run wild without guidance can cause recklessness, greed, or burnout. Direction means giving your desires structure. It means taking the raw energy of wanting something and channeling it into consistent, disciplined action. Instead of saying, I want success, and letting that desire control you, you direct it into small, daily habits, into intentional planning, into persistent effort that transforms desire into achievement. Suppression denies the dream, recklessness chases it blindly, but direction builds it with wisdom and discipline. One of the greatest misconceptions people have is that control takes away freedom, when in reality, control creates freedom. Suppression takes freedom away because it forces you to carry burdens that weigh you down. But direction gives freedom because it allows you to guide your energy toward things that truly matter. Imagine a river with no boundaries. It floods, it destroys, it becomes chaotic. But a river with clear direction produces energy, nourishes life, and creates movement forward. Human emotions, thoughts, and desires work the same way. Without boundaries, they destroy. With suppression, they stagnate. With direction, they flow in ways that give life and meaning. Control doesn't mean becoming emotionless or robotic. It doesn't mean denying your humanity. It doesn't mean pretending to be strong while you quietly fall apart inside. It means acknowledging every part of yourself, the joy, the anger, the sadness, the ambition, and then guiding those parts with wisdom. It means choosing not to let temporary feelings destroy permanent relationships. It means choosing not to let impulsive desires ruin your stability. It means choosing not to let unfiltered words damage your reputation. Control is about having authority over yourself, so you are not enslaved by urges, habits, or emotions that lead you where you don't want to go. Control is not a prison, it is a compass. It doesn't cage you, it gives you direction. It doesn't silence you, it teaches you to speak with intention. It doesn't kill your emotions, it channels them into purpose. And that direction is what separates a life of chaos from a life of meaning. Power is often misunderstood. People assume it comes from titles, wealth, status, or physical strength. But real power is far more subtle and far more lasting. True power begins within. It is not about controlling other people. It is about controlling yourself. The ability to govern your impulses, direct your emotions, and discipline your mind is what separates the strongest individuals from the rest. Without self-control, power is temporary at best and destructive at worst. History is full of examples of people who rose to greatness but fell because they lacked discipline over themselves. Their talent could not save them, their wealth could not sustain them, their influence could not protect them, because power without control always collapses. Control is not just a piece of power, it is the very foundation upon which all other forms of power rest. When you think about it, every area of life demands control in order to thrive. Without control of your words, you destroy relationships and damage reputations. Without control of your mood, you make decisions in anger that create regret. Without control of your money, you earn endlessly, yet remain trapped in debt and dependence. Without control of your mind, you allow negative thoughts and limiting beliefs to dictate the quality of your life. These are not small matters. They are the very pillars of your existence. To build anything meaningful, a strong career, healthy relationships, financial freedom, or inner peace, you must begin with control. It is the groundwork, the structure that holds everything else steady. Control gives you consistency, and consistency is what creates long-term strength. Anyone can succeed for a moment, but only those with discipline can sustain it. Think about a person who works out passionately for a few weeks, but then gives up when motivation fades. Compare that to someone who consistently shows up day after day, even when they don't feel like it. The first person might look powerful for a moment, but the second person builds lasting strength. The same is true in every area of life. Motivation is fleeting, but control keeps you moving even when motivation disappears. That is why people with true power don't rely on feelings to dictate their actions. They rely on discipline. Control also creates trust. People trust those who can remain steady under pressure, who don't allow their emotions to dictate their choices, who can be relied upon to make wise decisions no matter the circumstances. If you lose your temper easily, if your moods are unpredictable, if your words shift depending on how you feel, people will hesitate to trust you. But if you can stay calm when others panic, if you can speak with clarity when others are overwhelmed, if you can make decisions based on values instead of emotions, you become a person others naturally look to for leadership. That kind of trust is a form of power, and it doesn't come from domination or force. It comes from self-mastery. Control is also freedom. At first, this may sound contradictory because control is often associated with restriction, but in truth, discipline creates freedom, while lack of discipline creates bondage. If you cannot control your spending, you will forever be a slave to debt. If you cannot control your emotions, you will forever be a prisoner to regret. If you cannot control your thoughts, you will forever be a victim of your own mind. But when you master control, you create freedom. You have the freedom to live without fear of financial ruin. You have the freedom to maintain peace even in conflict. You have the freedom to direct your life instead of being tossed around by circumstances. This is why control is the foundation of power, because it frees you to build, to grow, and to lead. Another reason control is so powerful is because it separates reaction from response. Most people live reactively, allowing circumstances to pull them in every direction. Something goes wrong, they panic. Someone insults them, they retaliate. An opportunity appears, they jump without thinking. But a person with control does not react impulsively. They respond intentionally. They pause, they think, they align their actions with their long-term vision instead of their short-term feelings. This ability to pause, to direct your choices instead of being enslaved by impulses, is one of the greatest forms of power you can ever develop. It is the difference between someone who is ruled by life and someone who rules their life. Control also builds resilience. Life will always bring challenges, setbacks, and disappointments. No one can escape difficulty, but those who have control over themselves can withstand storms that would crush others. They do not crumble under pressure because they have trained themselves to remain steady. They do not let failure define them because they have control over their perspective. They do not quit at the first obstacle because they have control over their discipline. Resilience is not about never falling. It is about having the strength to rise again and again. And that strength comes from control. Ultimately, control is what gives your power direction. Talent without control can lead to arrogance. Ambition without control can lead to recklessness. Passion without control can lead to burnout. But when control is present, all of these qualities become tools for greatness instead of traps for destruction. It gives your life structure, balance, and focus. ensuring that your energy builds rather than destroys. Control doesn't take away from your power, it multiplies it. It doesn't silence your emotions, it directs them. It doesn't restrict your freedom, it protects it. Control is the difference between living a life of chaos and living a life of purpose, and it is the unshakable foundation upon which all true power is built.